Hey, how's it going everyone? It is Only here, welcome back to another video. Yeah man, it seems like we're getting new reports every day. I just reported like 2 days ago on the recent news that we've been getting based on the fact that we might be getting reveals for the next generation PlayStation and Xbox, come here in May. And yeah, more and more information's coming out. Actually, like literally the day after I made that video on Wednesday, just yesterday, Phil Spencer came out and replied to a fan on Twitter saying their next reveal isn't that too far away and it's going to focus more on games. You kind of expect that now that a lot of the hardware information is kind of out. All we really got going forward is software, and hopefully those updates will come here soon, which is pretty exciting. Obviously, the most important part of any console is the games you're going to be playing on it and what developers can do with that actual console. So that's going to be where everything kind of just shows itself, and honestly the most exciting part of any reveal or any launch type of a console is seeing what new games are possible. And it seems that Horizon Zero Dawn 2 is indeed coming to the PlayStation 5, currently being developed. Surprised? Shocked? Anyone? Not really. This is one of the games I for sure saw coming, but it's nice to kind of have that confirmation. There are some really good interesting tidbits about the whole series as a whole in terms of co-op, this possibly being a trilogy, and the fact that this game actually started originally being developed for the PlayStation 4, which in my opinion gives us some information about when we can possibly expect this game, or at least when they thought this game would come out. So let's dive into all this. This was reported by Video Games Chronicles. I know they're pretty new and they've actually come out with some pretty good reports here in the past few weeks. Definitely would recommend keeping an eye on their website. Today they came out with an article early in the morning saying PlayStation and Guerrilla Games are planning a trilogy of Horizon Zero Dawn. Multiple sources have told VGC that Sony Interactive Entertainment has greenlit an ambitious plans for post-apocalyptic open-world franchise, which debuted in 2017 with the 10 million selling Zero Dawn. Of course, 10 million is pretty impressive for a new IP. That's why Horizon was being talked around about being a possible new face for PlayStation at the time, because that's just kind of ridiculous, honestly. That's up there with like existing IPs like Spider-Man, God of War, and Uncharted 4. It's insane. They said the Amsterdam-based Guerrilla had always desired to deliver a series of Horizon games, and a multi-part script was written, but the plan was only officially agreed after the original game's strong debut on the PlayStation 4. The next installment, Horizon Zero Dawn 2, started development soon after the first game's successful release, sources said. Initially, the game was planned for PlayStation 4, however, it's thought that development has now entirely shifted to focus on Sony's next generation console. Now, that's a pretty big piece in my opinion. The fact that they started this on PlayStation 4 makes me think that this game's going to come out soon, because obviously if you're developing a console, you're already going to have a release date set in mind. Phil Spencer's even been talking about how he's saying that they've been working on the Xbox Series X since 2016. They started that. They always have an idea of when they want this thing out. Sony at the time of 2016, they definitely knew that they wanted obviously a PlayStation 5 somewhere around fall of 2020. You start these console plans definitely, I'd say, about 4 years beforehand. At least Sony did with the PS4, and it looks like they're doing it again with the PS5. That being said, that means that this game, most likely, in my opinion, is going to be, a 2021 title. I always thought that Horizon Zero Dawn 2 would be the first kind of big-ish, PlayStation exclusive to come out. Launch titles are always kind of, as games are, they're always a compromise. Games developers always talk about how, like, if they had a few more months to, work on the game, it'd even be better. That's part of the reason why a lot of the Sony games are good, is Sony gives that time, which is, why we have to wait so long for these great games. Launch titles, of course, are kind of the ones that get squished the most. It's new hardware. You gotta show what you could do at, the launch, but at the same time, you don't really get enough time to really work on those games. So ultimately, they're kind of compromised at the end of the day. They're kind of just, not the big games that they can really focus on, that you see later in the generation at least. So I think that Horizon Zero Dawn 2, since this did start development after, soon after Horizon Zero Dawn, which, I think we all kind of expected that. We got the Frozen Wilds, but besides that, they've been pretty quiet. This game's been in development for, I think, pretty much it's about 3 years now, which is definitely probably one of the longer PS5 games in development. Wouldn't be surprised to see this game come out in like spring or summer of 2021. You don't want to come out with it at launch, just because Horizon Zero Dawn 2 is one of those games you want to be really good to live up to the hype and ultimately have one of those big, PlayStation exclusives that's highly rated and ultimately obviously of quality. You don't want to sacrifice that by making it a launch title, of course. And ultimately, why drop it at launch when you can continue the momentum of the PS5 releasings later in 2021. Horizon Zero Dawn is said to be gigantic in scope, with a larger game world and more freedom to explore than its predecessor. People with knowledge of the game also indicate that the inclusion of a co-op feature, although it's not clear if this is delivered via the main story or a separate mode. Now, I'd say this is probably the most controversial piece of the news, probably the only piece that's really controversial. A lot of people want Horizon to just stay the single player standard game as it is, and a lot of people, you know, are open to the idea, especially since Guerrilla does have a background in multiplayer. So as for me, you know, we're hearing in this report that apparently they wanted to do it in the original game. I totally see Horizon fitting co-op, not gonna lie. You know, obviously you're gonna still want to have Aloy and the story there, or maybe it's a new protagonist in the same world. I think they'll follow with Aloy, such a beloved character at this point. But definitely I could see some endgame content, or at least some part of the game, like fighting these big gigantic beasts, you know, obviously that we saw in the first game. That'd be so incredible to do in co-op. Imagine the scale of that, especially if this game is bigger in scope with the big, you know, PS5 SSD, like these gigantic worlds, and playing that with your friends. Or at least certain, you know, missions would be really, really cool. Especially, you know, obviously if there's no compromise there. If Guerrilla has to compromise anything, I think they're going to be smart enough to know that. That's why they didn't really do it in the first one, because they wanted to focus more on delivering their story, which I think is a totally, you know, good reason, obviously, not to go into those kind of plans. But now that they, you know, they already have a groundwork for what the world is, definitely can experiment a little bit, especially with the sequel. You want to step it up a bit, get bigger in scope, maybe adding co-op. That sounds really cool in my opinion. I'd love to see that. I definitely think a lot of games nowadays, especially from the Sony side, aren't really, you know, venturing off into the multiplayer or co-op space. So I'd love to see Guerrilla go into that, especially with that background. I don't think there's a better team to do it, honestly. So yeah, I'm totally up for that. As I said just now, you know, a co-op feature was initially planned for the first game, but ultimately was scrapped. There even is a, you know, piece of development art that they use. I guess concept art's a better way of putting it. As I said, this was originally planned in the first one, so that's pretty cool. As we've already stated earlier, Horizon Zero Dawn is coming to Steam later this summer, which would make sense considering they'd want to get as many people as they can to get onto this franchise before they sell Horizon Zero Dawn as a big, you know, PS5 exclusive, the sequel. And yeah, there's also a comic book series. Just a lot of things are kind of lining up. Given the success, I mean, that's the biggest one. We kind of already knew this game was going to come out, considering how good this game sold originally as a new IP, both critically and also obviously with sales. So, you know, you look forward to it. Honestly, like, it's nice to have this report. Nothing really has changed in my opinion. I already kind of expected Horizon Zero Dawn 2, but it's nice to have that kind of confirmation, to know that Guerrilla is kind of stepping it up, you know, in terms of scope. We already knew they're hiring a lot more after, you know, they came out with that. I think this and God of War with Sony Santa Monica, for a lot of people, really put those two studios up to a higher pedestal of what they could do as a team. You know, as we know, there is a second team apparently at Guerrilla Games, so it's going to be pretty interesting to see what they are doing. There are rumors that there is going to be some kind of multiplayer shooter or possibly co-op shooter in that kind of space, considering what they've been hiring for as of lately. And I believe they also hired one of the directors or, you know, creative people for Rainbow Six Siege, so definitely some big talent there. So yeah, Guerrilla is going to be a really interesting studio, I think, to look out for, especially during the early years of the PS5, just because they were one of the studios that actually got a game quite middle of the generation for the PlayStation 4. They're not one of the big, you know, Sucker Punch, Naughty Dog that are having a game coming out this year, or Insomniac, or I guess, you know, Sony Bend, or any of the studios that already delivered games really recently. So that's pretty exciting. And yeah, besides that, we are due for a reveal here. I definitely think within the next month we'll get some information, hopefully. There are some rumors about Silent Hill that have been, you know, floating around on Reset Era, so it's definitely a really exciting time. It really does feel like it's a time where we're like literally weeks away from stuff blowing up, and stuff's not going to be really quiet anymore here come May/June, so you love to see it. And yeah, besides that, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Make sure to subscribe to keep up to date on all the next generation news, Last of Us 2, PS5, Xbox Series X, all that and more. Make sure to follow me on Twitter at OnlineZhD. And besides that, I hope you guys are staying safe and having a good day, and I'll catch you guys in the next video. Take care.